Ghana. You are tuned in to Worldview with me, Irbad Ibrahim. Over the past few months, there have been reports that the United States is ready to talk to its arch-enemy, North Korea, on matters of denuclearization. But Donald Trump has vacillated in the past few days, saying that potentially the June 12 meeting that should be held in Singapore may not come off at all. Today we do a critical analysis of where next we move on the Korean issue. To help us with the discussion, a pair of competent elderly citizens. To my immediate left, Professor Bafwajimai Dua, former UN Special Advisor on Governance. Prof,
yes.
Welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure.
It's been yonks. It's been a while.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Welcome back. And then we have Mr. Kukuzani. He is a founder of a think tank on foreign policy issues. Sir, you're welcome.
Nice to see you.
Okay. Prof, working at the pinnacle of international diplomacy, the United Nations, I don't know on which committees you served. How do negotiations like this that hinge upon nuclear arsenals and nuclear warheads, how do they take place? Do you do prior assessment of the veracity of the commitment of both parties, or you can just announce dates and change them?
First of all, I did not serve at headquarters or with the government to be on committees. I was appointed by the UN to be senior advisor on governance in a few countries before I retired, just to put it straight. Coming back to the issue, Ebert, see, the issue of nuclear weapons in international relations, I thought was over, especially when the Cold War apparently subsided. But somehow, because of countries like North Korea and, of course, Iran, and America's determination not to see any other country developing that capacity, this issue has come back to the forefront of international politics lately. But you know, it's interesting because for decades, the US, after the Second World War, sought to develop its capacity. And we know that there are 5 key nuclear powers in the world who form the nuclear club. But with the signing of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1972 or so, the hope was that the spread of nuclear weapons would be contained. But of course that was not possible because technology, once it's invented, you know, it's easy for other scientists to duplicate. So what we see now is a new government in the US headed by Donald Trump, who is determined to kind of invoke Cold War ideas to rejuvenate nuclear power relations, especially when North Korea began to demonstrate its newly acquired capacity. And also, I think it's been an issue because the capacity has gone beyond the expectations of the nuclear capable countries, that is the 5 key nuclear countries. Because once North Korea tested and confirmed that in fact it has a land-based missile that can travel about 8,000 miles to reach the land of the United States, I think the Americans started, you know, shaking. But its capability currently, I think, is limited to the land-based missiles because there are 3 categories of nuclear missiles. Those that are launched, that can be launched from the sea, what we call the sea-launched ballistic missiles in submarines under the belly of the oceans, and those that can be launched from the air, the air-based ballistic missiles. And all these are determined by the distance to which they can travel to cause damage to enemy targets. You know. So I think the Americans are afraid, and especially when they believe that the country with that capability is not, so to speak, a stable country, and in their concept of stability, a democratic country. And that's why perhaps even the Iranian efforts has also become an issue for the Americans.
Okay.
So I think now, after that, I know we'll come there,
Okay.
but I just wanted to provide a background to this. And I think with the determination of the Trump government to equally attack, quote unquote, the Iranians in terms of imposing the worst sanctions in history, as they say, I think after Korea, the attention of the Americans will be certainly diverted to Iranians, just simply to prevent them. And in the course of the conversation, perhaps we can explore why America wants to prevent these countries.
We appreciate the preamble. Mr. Kukujani, is it because Donald Trump doesn't understand the inner workings and the nitty-gritty of foreign policy negotiations that he would use Twitter to say that he agrees what Kim Jong-un is saying is nice and therefore he's ready to meet? Or you could have sent, a team to do the underground work before making such a commitment. So when you become decisive in your decision, you don't vacillate.
Mr. President, President Trump has been one of the most unorthodox presidents we've ever seen in the American system. And he has advisors around with him, Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Bolton, who are equally of the same thinking. That, for me, is a bit worrying. What I think keeps him quiet is his generals at the Pentagon that tells him the reality of war, and that whatever happens, he needs to slow down a little bit. And when we move the story down to North Korea as to why it is North Korea, and I remember a few months back there was this hullabaloo about the voices from America and the voices from North Korea. In negotiations as to whether North Korea should denuclearize, I think the Americans waited there with all the guns blazing. You will have to get rid of these things or we will not do business with you. The North Koreans know what they have. Little as it may be, they know they can be a thorn in the flesh of America. And like Mr. Dua said, they threw just one nuclear head towards that country, the devastation will be wicked. And therefore, they have to find a way to negotiate with these people. The North Korean president is also a very tactical president. He's more afraid of his generals than Mr. Trump. So he also has, advisors who tell him how to play the game with North Korea. Remember, the president of North Korea's father was equally having issues with America. His grandfather was also having issues. But whenever the deal was struck, the North Koreans find a way to go around it and do what they want to do. I think they've decided that, look, from history, they've never abided by the rules of the game. So this time we'll have to be a bit hard on them. I think it's a bad script. I think for what the world is today and how nuclearized we are,
Yes, sir.
they should be looking more at signing deals with those who are problematic, like Russia and Iran, rather than, signing treaties with their allies in Europe. So there are some risks ahead of us. As I understand it this afternoon, it is possible that the meeting will come on in Singapore on the 12th of June. The South Korean president has been taking the initiative in moving down to North Korea and negotiating very, very hard, because at the end of the day, if something should happen, the problems will happen more in South Korea than in the state of America.
Okay. Up front, North Korea has made a little commitment. Some 3 Americans that had been incarcerated for so long were handed over to the Secretary of State Pompeo when he did the curtain raiser with the North Koreans. But do you think the Trump administration is being a bit gullible in the whole of this?
Oh, not at all. I think they know what they are about. Trump, by his nature, is a bully. Before he became president, if you look at his history, his record, he made money through bullying people. There's no question at all about that. And he has brought that private aspect of his life into governance, so to speak, into international relations.
Yes.
The release of those 3 Americans was simply a goodwill gesture that the Koreans wanted to. I think they show some seriousness, but I can also agree with my friend here. who said that from his grandfather to his father, whenever there was an effort to bring some peace, they would find a way around it, and everything got scattered. That's also true. But I think this time around, if you look at how first the two Koreans met unexpectedly, and the extent to which they discussed their common issues and the friendliness and everything, I think this time they are serious. You know why they are serious, the North Koreans?
Tell us, Prof.
They are serious because first, there's a real threat. Because you see, once you develop nuclear capability, you become a target for those who have the power, the same power. Especially with Americans. Once Korea has demonstrated its capability, I'm sure North Korea is now locked into American nuclear targeting. There's no question of it. So that's the first threat. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the North Korean economy is in shambles. The economy is in shambles. And with all the sanctions, I think they are trying to find a way out to help their country to emerge out of underdevelopment into something. Because you can have nuclear capability when your country is as poor as church mouse, you know. So I think that the North Korean government, first with the security threat that it has brought upon itself by developing that capacity, and also on top of that, the possibility of greater sanctions by the Americans, especially with the Trump in power, who can easily mobilize other Western European countries, hopefully to join, and that will really be devastating for the North Koreans. That's why I think they are more serious now than before. But on the issue of the negotiations, if I should say just a word on that, you see, again, like he said, Trump is very unconventional. We haven't seen any leader of a big power behaving this way. First, relying almost exclusively on Twitter. Just like he fired his Secretary of State, who was on his round somewhere and just with a Twitter say, "Come back, you are fired." You know.
It was in Africa.
Exactly, it was in Africa. So he's conducting foreign policy on that, and it's troubling because for a foreign policy analyst and those who are interested in international security, if a leader of his standing cannot be predictable, it creates instability in the system. So it's a serious challenge for the whole world. And I think his style of negotiation, this back and forth with the North Koreans, is part of his strategy. Again, if you read his books...
Is he being bipolar or is being tactical, Prof?
Tactical, yes, in the sense that he bullies you or he throws some threat, and hoping that if he doesn't get this, at least we come to this level, which is acceptable to him. So if you want $1,000 from me, he won't come and say, "Give me $1,000." He say, "Give me $5,000." Now, if you're able to negotiate down, he gets to the 1,000.
And maybe what he wants is $700.
And that's exactly what he's done to be a billionaire. Okay, so I think he's brought that in international relations, and as I say, those who have studied international relations over the decades, this is very disturbing.
Okay,
very disturbing.
Okay, Kuku, not the two Koreas have started speaking to each other.
Yeah.
And the U.S. for so long has been a very hostile arbiter to North Korea specifically. So if my brother and I have a problem, and you've picked sides, they could as well resolve their issues, making the United States a bystander. Why should it play big brother in these bilateral negotiations between the North and South?
Well, I think South Korea and North Korea have been batting their heads for many, many years now, since they had the war. And they've not been able to, as it were, unify like you have East Germany and West Germany. Maybe one day through this process it will happen. We hope it does. They are brothers. They are cousins. They are by their biology very, very close together. So it will be very easy for them to come together at a certain point in time. For geopolitics, the Americans will get their nose into places where they shouldn't do. For strategic reasons, they want to strategize in all parts of the world so that in times of trouble, they can quickly activate themselves and make the moves that they have to make. I don't think we're able to stop that, because at the end of the day, the bank accounts and the military power is what is going to work here. What I think they should do is to have, have a way of abiding by the norms of the conventions that they sign in terms of the arms race. And they should be looking more at Russia. and Iran, like I said before, because they are the people who threaten the whole world as it stands. And Russia has amassed so much nuclear. America itself has so many warheads. How can we get together to sit down and make sure that, look, this world is for all of us, and that we need peace at a certain point in time? North Korea, I think, will not give up their nuclear. That is what that's their insurance policy. They want economic benefits, and they want guarantees in security. Remember, Mr. Bolton kept saying, making instances about Mr. Gaddafi and how he was overthrown and how they murdered him. So the Prime Minister of North Korea says, look, we've seen you before. We know you guys. We know what you can do. Until I can get my benefits and until you can guarantee me peace till thy kingdom come, there's no talk.
Okay. Prof, maybe you didn't have access to classified documents about North Korea's capabilities. It's a pariah state. It has only tested intercontinental ballistic missiles. Don't you think we are overhyping North Korea, and it may not be as capable as the world is viewing it?
Well, certainly its nuclear capability is limited because, as you rightly said, currently we believe its capacity is limited to intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I don't think it's developed much of the SLBMs and the ALBMs. But for those countries possessing this weapon, depending on the throw weight, if one missile is capable of taking out New York City, that's more than unacceptable to the Americans. So one is not. So we may be happy in a way because I don't believe that North Korea, for that matter, any country would like to trigger, that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of forces behind these things. Don't forget that when somebody talk about the military-industrial complex, there was a sense in that because there's a lot of money in these kinds of North Korea, but with the Americans and those who constantly keep multiplying. Because, for instance, we know that America can destroy the whole world over about 3 times. So why do we then continue to develop more? And that brought about this crazy idea of madness in the whole nuclear pursuit. So I think for America, they will be concerned. But truly, if we want to get that part of the region to kind of relax a little bit, then there must be a strong negotiations or dialoguing amongst the key players there, because North Korea has the backing of China. China is a world one of the 5 members of the nuclear club. And then, of course, the closeness of North Korea to Russia certainly brings Russia into it. And so Russia is the second or one of the 5 nuclear club members. So the whole Southeast Asia, and now that China has even gone beyond its own territory to create an island in the ocean where it's going to assemble its military arsenals, all in this whole strategy of making sure the Southeast Asian zone cannot be intruded upon by the Americans and all that. So there's a serious fight going on there. I mean, not actual anti-fight, but in terms of positioning themselves for future. And that, for me, is a danger, you see. So I think these bilateral relations or negotiations between the Americans and North Koreans might not give all the answers.
Right, yeah.
You have to have the Chinese, you have to have the Russians. But so far, we are not dealing with that. The hope is that maybe if you deal with North Korea, which is supposedly a rogue state, their leaders perhaps are not rational. There are all kinds of funny assumptions behind these kinds of policies by the Americans. Because otherwise, why would America think that no other country should have it, but we can have it? Because America is not talking about denuclearizing. But any other country that attempts to nuclearize, you say no. Because in their thinking, these other people are not capable rationally to control the weapons once they are developed. There's a certain inherent superiority issues there, you know.
And
so
the power game.
And the power game, but that's to entrench their superiority, you know, over the other parts of the world. So for me, that has been the issue. But I think that if they were able to keep a cap on the North Korea and then possibly Iran, in other words, to stop the spread of nuclear development around the world, because you never know who becomes a leader of a nuclear capable country. What do you call a Stalin? Is not Stalin? Can emerge. You know, so that's the danger.
Well,
Hitler is the one I was talking about.
To stretch Prof's argument, the US and other countries that are part of this exclusionist club hold up a chalice. They say this bottle contains something poisonous. Don't possess it, but we can keep ours. Don't you see that that's double standards and they're being a bit hypocritical? Why do you have nuclear weapons and prevent other nations from developing?
Yeah, that's the hypocrisy of the world, isn't it? And empires will behave like that. Empires will like to be empires. And the fear now is that, is China after our empire or not? And is Russia after our empire or not? And what do we do about it? That's the problem. One American administrator said that Mr. Trump is the man who punches you in the face. If you punch him back, then he's your friend. The EU presidents went to Washington to talk to him about this Iran deal, and he gave them nothing. Chinese hit back at him, and he sits back. So it is something for our leaders to know the personality that they are dealing with. That if he's unorthodox, you also have to apply the unorthodox skills to deal with him. He would not, if you sit in Africa or somewhere and tell them you are hungry and you are poverty-stricken, he has no time for that. Not at all. You have to psychoanalyze the man and find ways around him and deal with him. And I think the Orientals are not people who talk a lot, but they are very strategic and they are very thinking, and they sit down and they plan, and that's how the Chinese people have got to where they've got to. You don't hear them making any wild statements. They abide by certain rules and regulations, even though they have been accused of industrial espionage all the time, but they have tactical ways of moving forward, you say. So the game is an open game.
No, but Kuku, the least you can do is atomic warheads are bad. We've started destroying ours. So don't develop any.
Not at all. Not at all. Empires don't do that. The Roman Empire will never do that. The British Empire never did that. They'll keep it till their kingdom come. Who wants his empire to be taken up with all the largesse and the glory of an empire? Empires will have to go when half the time there's an internal revolt. The wall around the Roman Empire, which they suggested many years ago, did not do them anything. It was those within the system that collapsed the system. So people don't give up power very easily. You have to really fight them to get it. If they've amassed so much, what we call cyber, software, military, they have about 1 million guys on the grounds on the grounds at foot soldiers. A lot of F-15s fighting around, bombers. It's huge. To collapse North Korea will be very easy. It won't take a lot of time.
So why don't you carry out a stealthy operation in the dead of the night and pluck Kim Jong-un out of, Pyongyang?
Oh, not easy.
If that is if they have that capability.
The Americans, the American empire doesn't even know where half of the weapon codes are hidden. It's not an open secret that wherever you go, you can find the armaments here and come and take. No, you don't do that. Because we want to give you a surprise. Anytime you mess up with you, we will surprise you. People have become a bit enlightened these days. Governments have become enlightened. Okay. And they know the American script and they know the Western script. Okay. So they're all playing the game with them.
Okay. Prof, educate us. I know you are not someone who deals in ordnance and armories, but there's this talk of pressing the nuclear button. And before Trump became president, Obama and others were saying he was so unstable and the world couldn't trust him not to press the button. What is a nuclear weapon? Is it that someone can have a button next to his bed and he decides that I'm going to press it and it's going to launch? Talk us through the intricate. I know
Yes, yes,
maybe
that's
you don't
fine.
have the
That's
expertise to do
A
that.
little bit,
But, you know, because you talked
Yeah.
about leaders that are not rational.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, fact, until recently, all American presidents travel around the world with a special assistant following him with a black box. Until recent, Obama stopped it, I think, and Bush also, it started disappearing. But in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever you saw an American president walking anywhere, there will be a special assistant with a black box. You know what that box is? That is supposedly the button where the president, when it comes to it, can press it, not to release the missiles, but to get his
Codify.
officers to start releasing the missiles. That was the Cold War era. So it's true that there's a button. But the real missiles are shot by specially trained officers. If you know the states, Colorado, there's this mountains at this place, Littleton, not Littleton, sorry. I'll get the name later. I was there once. It's a huge mountain. That's where the Air Force base is. And under the mountain is where the nuclear control system is. All right? So they are there 24 hours. Again, during the Cold War, up to the 90s, the collapse of the Cold War kind of lessened these kinds of tensions. So sure, there are buttons, and there are nuclear wars with warheads of different categories. And if you remember, when within the first few months of Trump's administration, a senior American official was in Canada to give a talk. And they asked him the same question that you posed, that this guy, is he going to order you to push the button and you do? The guy said, and I remember very vividly, he said, look, we are not robots. We who man these weapons, we are rational. So when the order is given, we also cross-check and do other things before we decide finally to release. So in other words, a president who is now known, even by his own intelligence people, not to be stable. Because, look, if you look at what Trump has done and continues to do and his record, it is believed, true or false, I don't know, that he's not really stable. Because he can even study his past a year and a half administration, and you can tell. So I think that at the Pentagon, there is a special, I suspect, because Americans are not stupid, I suspect, and nobody wants to have a nuclear war, by the way, because nobody can predict its final outcome, even on the Americans themselves. So I'm sure they've developed so many layers of checks to ensure that even if Trump were to give the order, they will make sure that that order is properly contained and carried out. So it's not that simple.
Okay, Prof. And thank you so much. We appreciate that. Kuku, Prof talks about an exclusive 5, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council possessing nuclear warheads. But there are some 3 others, Israel, Pakistan, and India. And less than 4 kilometers from where we are sitting, Dr. Nkrumah was futuristic to come up with the idea of the atomic research. What is the future of, nuclear enrichment?
I think the principle has been, and by any standard, Mr. Bolton made that comment not very long ago. The best form of defense is to attack. The best form of defense is to attack. And that is why most governments have military, and other equipments to make sure that they are safe from invaders. So Ghana will have national security doing all sorts of skirmishes around, trying to work out on a daily basis, 24 hours, making sure that we don't have intruders coming to disturb our peace. To get peace, you must armor yourself. It becomes problematic when it becomes a bizarre storyline. And therefore, what do we need to do? What we need to do are the cool heads to be sitting that Mr. President Trump does not help. We have targets and certain dates that some of these treaties has to be reviewed. I think one is in 2022, one is... We want to see what is going to happen after that. And if you don't sign deals with the opposing factions who are determined to do what you don't want them to do, and you decided, oh, Iran, I have no deal with them no more. We're going to punish them and all that. And they have their leeway in doing what they want to do. Who says that nuclear energy is the only way out? There's software now in cyber war that they can disengage half of these things that we're talking about. Let's suppose Mr. Jones has those software and creates some freak system, and somebody panics in the Pentagon and decides that Mr. President Trump better press that button. We're in big time trouble. So we have issues that needs thinking people to sit down and say, hey, the world is for us. God gave us this world to live in it in peace. This mayhem must stop, and must stop now.
Okay. And Prof, on Monday, just some 48 hours from now, FPSO at Tamils will be shut down for repairs, and that could affect the supply of power. Can't we continue where Dr. Nkrumah left off, that we don't rely only on solar and hydro energy? Why don't we go nuclear? Not for the bombs.
He posed the question to you, where he's now turning to realize that. Very good.
Not for the bombs.
I understand.
Not for the bombs.
I understand.
But for energy security.
Actually, the world does not stop any country pursuing nuclear development for peaceful purposes. And that's why Iran has been arguing all along that its research, its getting into nuclear development is for peaceful purposes. So in the same way, Ghana has a right to get into that development. And that's why Nkrumah started.
KNUST doesn't teach nuclear science, for God's sake.
Well, maybe because it has not been a national priority in any way. Now that
the energy crisis we have, this shouldn't be a priority.
That's correct. I know, but you know how universities work. If, for instance, the government had directed or has provided some basic infrastructure for them, because to get into that, the basic equipment for you to start researching and working on it's heavy. That's, by the way, it's easier because we have the atomic energy here. They can use it as part. By the way, there's also, is it the University of Nuclear something across the street from the atomic?
Is there?
There's a new institution called, I forgot the exact. But anyway, people are going to make the research. But I think your point relates to having alternative energy sources away from hydro and oil. Yes, in fact, that's what I think is being said lately. The director of the Nuclear Atomic Energy Center has said that they have plans to begin to develop nuclear energy. And you know that not long ago, sometime last year, the government sent out enriched uranium, because when you use uranium beginning to enrich it, you get to a point where it becomes useful for developing nuclear energy. I mean, not energy, but bombs and that kind of stuff. So that was sent to China.
I think government was censured and criticized heavily.
Yeah, but you know, you signed a treaty. What we have, we do not, or we are not allowed to go beyond a certain level, because once you enrich uranium to a higher level,
and there are some pictures rolling on the screen, and so you can see normally saber rattling, public show of military bravado.
Yes.
They may show some of these. North Korea.
Yeah, those are the missiles, the land-based missiles.
So the big wheels are launchers.
They are launchers. But also they can just carry them and just plant them where they have to be launched.
So if you wanted to attack, American interests in Japan or South Korea, you would drive these to the borders.
It depends on the capacity. No, it depends on the capacity of what you see. You see, this may be big, but maybe the capacity is not that big to reach the territory of the Americans. So it depends. The true power is what is important.
Okay.
because this may be just for 50 miles, maybe, 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's capable of traveling 8,000, 6,000 miles, that means it can travel all the way from Korea to the Americas. And that's where the concern becomes. All right. So coming back to the Ghanaian issue, yes, I agree that we can use, after all, there have been attempts in South Africa, I think has one, but there's a danger to that. You may recall an incident in the States, in Pennsylvania, the 3 Mile Island.
Right.
Or you may recall Chernobyl in
and also
Russia.
Fukushima in Japan.
Fukushima was an explosion of nuclear.
The Chernobyl disaster.
Yes.
in Russia.
Chernobyl, exactly. If you are not careful, it can destroy you.
So they think other countries, this club of 5, they think other countries don't have the expertise to handle fissile material. So that's what they think.
America has stopped nuclear power generation since the 3 Mile Island incident. And they've placed restrictions, because it was really a danger for the country. So we can go there in moderation. We can, if we are capable of abiding by all the rules and regulations and having a very disciplined personnel to manage it. But at times, the way we manage ourselves, I get scared if we bring that technology here. Because even look at our electricity, how we manage it. And negligence can cause a severe damage.
Health and safety.
Yes,
very poor health and safety
exactly.
standards.
So we've got to be careful. It's something we can encourage, but I think as we are developing it, we have to develop it with the discipline that it requires to maintain it.
Koko, you think going nuclear is a no-go area for Ghana because of poor maintenance culture?
We haven't got there yet, I don't think. I think.
But Israel hasn't only gone nuclear. It has nuclear
Israel is
warheads.
a very strong country, and remember, they have a strong partner, America.
We are partners with the United States as well. We are an ally.
But the Americans are not going to give.
Let me use the word
technology.
strong partner. Israel is a very strong partner. That is why Israel decides to mess around in the Middle East. Nobody can touch them. They are the people. It was Mr. their Prime Minister Netanyahu who did a display on the board about what was happening in Iran, and that influenced Mr. President Trump's thinking and said, "Look, I have no deal with these guys." And the reason why they do that is that the Israeli
lobby in the U.S.
It's not even that. It's the security agency,
Mossad.
The Mossad. They provide the excellent services that America wants within that region, and so they cannot ignore them. They make a lot of money out of them. They give them enough advice, and they have a real strong partnership. That is what I call a strong partnership. Not Ghana and America. We don't have a partnership. I mean, the partnership with America is almost non-existent. What partnership do you have? USAID? Visiting cultural centers? So what? No. The partnership should be a strong partner, and that's what we need. We need to have a strong partnership with a country that is strong, that can support us in all sorts of ways.
Okay. Prof, can the Americans wait out Kim Jong-un? He's pretty young and he may be around for the next 2 or 3 decades.
Oh, but all their previous governments have waited out American presidents. American presidents are at most 8 years,
yes,
and they have unlimited duration. They have unlimited duration. That's the thing dealing with so-called dictators and so-called democratic societies. 8 years, you are gone. And the next president of America may not want to pursue the same kind of policies that Trump is pursuing. So I think that one way or the other, the issue must be tackled. And I do agree with my good friend here that the Koreans are not going to just dismantle their weapons, because they are wicked in terms of negotiating with the Americans. They may decide to limit what they're doing. They may decide to lock down some of these armaments, but to destroy them before you give aid, no, I don't think they will, because it gives them a certain standing in international relations. And also, eventually, if the North and South come together, it's good for the 2 countries.
Yeah, because I feel the U.S. is crying more than the bereaved. The main concern, you plunged a foot in the region was because of the Korean War. Now they are meeting. Even earlier today they met.
They met.
So what is America's stake in this?
Well-
They are not ready. They are war weary. They are tired of going to war. They are fatigued. So why is the U.S. trying to?
Like I said, America's geopolitics. There's a lot of tensions around the world in terms of power gaps and all that goes with it. So the Prime Minister for North Korea is not a daft boy. He went to a boarding school in Switzerland. He's tasted Western lies before, but he behaves as if he's never been anywhere before, and that is the way they behave. And the generals there are the real advisors. And like I said before, he's more afraid of his generals than President Trump. And they were advising him in a way that is prudent and say, look, they will come in with guns firing away, cool heads, keep on your focus. We want economic benefits, and we shall have economics, and we will want guaranteed security. I think the Americans will shift halfway. That's the bullying tactics. If you read negotiation books, that's the way they go. But to get to a point, they'll realize that, look, President Trump has too many things on his plate at the moment. He would rather get these things off the way. There's midterm elections coming on. He has the special prosecutor on his heels. There's too many things around the president's plate. He would need to throw some of it away so that he can have some peace of mind to govern the country and the world as it may be.
Why do we move from here? Will these entrenched positions harden, or they will soften at some point, depending upon, because Trump, even though hands over the olive branch, he kept reiterating America's military might and capability to strike North Korea where it would pinch it the most. So could Trump do the usual thing and maybe strike the first blow?
No. I think the word has been used. Bully is just a bully. There's no way Americans are going to allow the president to launch a nuclear war. No. It's incredible. I mean, it's madness. So it's not going to happen. But I think he's using the power of America to bring this country, so to speak, in line. Because certainly, America is always concerned when any country has that capability. That has been the trend since the Cold War. Okay? Those that already have, they have developed to the level where they have this so-called deterrence strategy, which means that if you strike me first, I'll be able to absorb your strike and in turn give you an unacceptable damage. And that is the deterrence. Madness, mutual assured destruction. That has been achieved between the Americans and the Russians. Okay. With the European countries like Britain and France that may have it, NATO takes care of that. So America is not concerned about that. But with the real so-called enemy, the Russians, that has been attained. So none of them will ever dare. Now, if you release anything towards North Korea, mind you, you're attacking China because China has a border. So the repercussions of you attacking Korea through nuclear means is more grievous than anything else you can imagine.
So any threat of use of force, Trump would just be blowing hot air.
The force could be something else other than nuclear. I thought you were talking nuclear. Because America has how many troops in South Korea? They have almost 800 or 400,000 people there, troops. So they can march into Korea. That's a threat enough. And they do have non-nuclear missiles. In other words, missiles that can do damage, perhaps not in terms of nuclear, which releases gases that can kill you like Hiroshima that we saw. But other missiles that can target specific
so can there be controlled bombardment based upon intel that this is where the caches are?
Of course.
The US should go for that.
No. But why should they go for that? Nobody is asking for war. Because are you suggesting that America should take out North Korea? No. Because that can ignite something beyond this guy's own imagination. No, not war. We are not talking of war. I think we are talking about peacefully resolving this.
No, but peace has been elusive in the past 5 or so decades.
So let's assume for a moment that there's war. What happens? For a country like Ghana, we will be in trouble, big time. And wars don't start for a day or two and then it ends up, can go on for years. Syria is an example. And if we import everything from the US, UK, China, wherever, and there's a war, and there's no food security, we'll start fighting within ourselves. Yeah.
No, but North Korea is using this aura of invincibility as a bargaining chip. Soon they'll be shipping oil to North Korea. And 2 years down the line, we go back to square one. Shouldn't there be an end in sight for such, activities by North Korea?
Well, you have other countries playing a role. China, in the beginning of all this facade, was part of the negotiations. The Americans left them out of it, and South Korea took it over, and that's where it's got to. And like my brother too said here, China is just waiting by the wings, waiting to see what happens. And when war starts, allies get in, other people comes to support. China might decide, look, these are our brothers.
It's on the border.
We don't want foot soldiers, we don't want American soldiers around here to come and mess around. Goodbye and bye-bye to you. So, everybody's watching to see how the game plays.
Obama was, as a foreign policy direction, Obama was talking about containment. For how long will you contain? Don't you go for the jugular vein and decimate the capabilities of a troublesome, rogue and renegade, state like North Korea?
I know you are playing the devil's advocate.
You're playing the Libyan game.
And you're doing very well. You see, containment policy was exactly what the Americans established after the Second World War. And American strategists today look back and say, yes, we succeeded because through containment, we got the USSR, Soviet Union, to collapse. It was containment. And I remember as a student, one of my professors, Professor Kelly, who was one of these military strategists, said that America simply spent and burned the Russians. You know what that means? Because when you keep developing nuclear weapons, it's expensive. The America's economy could support that. The Russians, or the Soviets at the time, I should say, were not able. That's why by the 80s, when Gorbachev came in, the economy of the Russians, the Soviets, was almost
collapsed.
downhill. It was how they were forced to divert their energies, their creativity, their resources to developing nuclear weapons.
So it was a bait. And
it was a bait,
the bait.
And they burned them out. So containment in that respect worked. So there was never an exchange of weapons between the two countries. But in the end, one fell apart. You see? So containment could work. And I mean, look, if North Korea is intransigent and he wants to keep on this for the next 20, 50 years, wait and see. Because already the economy is pinching them up. And that's why I guess Trump is again looking at Iran and saying, look, we are going to impose the most stringent sanctions in history. And actually, it's hurting the Iranians. If you follow the news, their currency is falling apart. Basic commodities are disappearing because we are in an interdependent world. No nation can go it alone. Another fallout from this Iranian thing is the rising prices of oil. If investors and other dealers begin to see that, in fact, there's a real danger of war in the Middle East involving Iran, you will go back to buying a barrel of oil, $150 to $200 per barrel.
Right.
And that will have immediate impact on Ghana. So all of us we are affected. That's why we are saying, look, war is not the answer. I think we need to find better ways to deal with it.
When you are in North Korea and Coco, you can't access Facebook, you can't access Twitter, you can't go on to YouTube. So how can we have the Tahrir Square magnitude of grassroots mobilization if a head-on collision, Prof says, is not the best option? Can there be a way of influencing matters within North Korea so it caves in and the people rise up against the regime?
Well, I think the script there has been that what you don't know and what you don't see life goes on unabated. They have their own ways of going about it.
So North Koreans are happy. They are happy with the regime.
What you call happiness might not be their happiness.
Exactly.
And what is their happiness is not your happiness. We tend to confuse that all the time. Look at China. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Americans of the Western world decided that, look, for the Chinese, there's a huge number here, about 1 billion people. For them to get into the system and start copying our democratic principles, the rule of law and all that goes with it, let them into the WTO. And let's start trading with them. And they will see what life is all about. And they might end up seeking for the rule of law, free speech and all that. 25 years out, they missed out. The Americans ended up chasing ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And they spent all their time on there. Whilst the Chinese said, look, we need to bring prosperity to our people. And that is what has happened now. Now America says, it's got up and said, look, we are in big time trouble now. The real war should be with China. And they will get there, eventually. As for these skirmishes with these little countries, it's just to show power to China that, look, we have enough what we call gas in our systems to tackle if you have to tackle it. But I dare say that the real power game is between Russia, China, and America. And very soon, by the end of this year, you see certain things happening, I'm very sure.
I am a beneficiary of international exchange programs, learning new cultures, getting to sit with people. Can we do that for North Korea so North Korea comes around over time?
Well, that has been a policy of the Americans for years, since Kennedy's time, when with the Peace Corps introduction and cultural exchange and all that. That's why American embassies used to have cultural affairs officers. Now they don't have it anymore, by the way. But that was the reason, that just to promote diversity. And also comes from the notion in international relations theory, what we call the idealism, versus the realist. Once the idealists have the upper hand in American foreign policy, you begin to see these kinds of policies, directives, trying to build, they look at the world as a global village where everybody has to depend on the other. So that idea came. Now you're asking if such exchanges can help bring the North Koreans into play. Yes, I mean, because the more North Koreans are exposed to Western quote-unquote civilization,
African civilization, not Western.
African
civilization.
Correct. Yeah. The more we get that, but unfortunately, Koreans are
because
not,
they don't have an embassy here.
But Koreans
so,
are not
His Excellency the President can decide to make an overture.
But that is not solving the problem.
You understand that North Korea come open an embassy here. We open a diplomatic mission in Pyongyang.
But see, that will not help you. The issue is to resolve their differences with the Americans. Having an embassy, Ghana having an embassy in Korea, what will be the benefit in terms of solving the underlying problem between the West?
Did you consult England and America before opening your
they
embassy?
Even allow
Would they
you
allow
look at
it?
Taiwan
They will not allow
and China.
it.
Everybody has
Didn't
withdrawn
consult.
embassies in Taiwan. Why? Because the big ones said, if you don't, I will penalize you here. And the same thing can happen if you want to.
Enough money. They must find a way of neutralizing the world order. I think is wrong anyway. The capitalist system seems to have created so much wealth at a certain point, and there's so much poverty, at a certain area. We need to look at these things very, very carefully. And this is not the only thing that we're going to see. We are seeing a lot more routes in cities and disorganizations in certain countries, not wars, but general disorganizations in countries. And a lot of it is pointing to, things are not working well. We need to, the G20, whatever they call themselves, should be meeting all the time to make sure that the world is a better place, it's a fairer place, justice, equity should be the way forward.
Thank you so much, Coco. Prof.
I can't help but align myself with the comments that he's made. Truly, the world order needs to be reorganized. And that was what I think Obama, in his own way, was trying to forge, that Americans have kind of turned against through Donald Trump. Right now, if Trump says America first, it means that the rest of the world
don't matter.
And he's taking out policies that used to be very beneficial to poor countries like AIDS and those kind of things, support that we're getting from the America. So it tells you that one individual finding himself in a very powerful position to do good, if that individual is not good-minded, so to speak, then that one individual can bring havoc to the rest of us. And unfortunately, I think that's what's happening now. So finally, on Korea, I think there's going to be a way. I don't think they are going to go to war. I think after all these blasphemies and all that, they are going to find a way to resolve it.
A deceptive one that will only shelve it for a while, then we go back to square one. I'm
not sure. It depends on what agreement they reach. If America and North Korea are able to reach certain agreement, because, you know, what example can I give quickly? The point is, it depends on the negotiations. It depends on what America is able to get the North Koreans to do, and vice versa. Once that agreement is reached, I'm sure there will be mechanisms to monitor to ensure that both sides respect the agreement that they reach.
What a wonderful note to end this conversation on. We discussed President Donald Trump's dilemma over North Korea. And we had in the studios Professor Balfour Ajimendua, former UN Senior Special Advisor on Governance. Sir, thank you so much for making time.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And I also had Mr. Kuku Jani. He is the founder of a think tank on foreign policy issues. Sir?
My pleasure.
Thank you as always.
Pleasure.
All too soon, we've come yet again to the end of this week's edition. And this show was ably put together by Celestina V and the rest of the crew. So we come your way next week with another edition. Stay blessed and keep praying for Africa.